this is another multi-bet pod, if I remember, but I know you're a CLP subscriber. So where's this one played out of?
Texas Card House in Irving.
Okay. So that's the one. Is that the TCH Social or is that the original?
Yeah, it's the new location, and that's mainly where all the players at the bigger stakes flock to these days.
So right, because they took all their they took all their business away from themselves, right?
Yeah, the original Dallas location, they mainly just play 1-2 no limit and 1-2 PLO and
Yep.
sometimes a mixed game. But yeah, everyone goes to social now.
Okay, so TCH Irving Social, and what's the size of the game?
2-5 no limit with a 1,500 max buy-in.
Okay.
But games can get pretty big because there's a double board bomb pod, every dealer change every 30 minutes.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. That's one of the other things that I asked Doug about too when we were sitting on top of the Green Monster. I said, do you guys still play double board? Because I remember when I first moved to Austin, this was like right before COVID, they were playing like uncapped double board PLO bomb pot like during dealer changes at 1-2 no limit. And I think Doug said that like, yeah, it's just good for the room if you cap those. They still play the PLO, the double board PLO, even in Hold'em straight games, but they started to cap them because it was just like, you can imagine it's not good for the room. Okay, so 2-5, 1,500 max. How deep are you?
Effective stack is 2,500, and I'm the hero I cover. So UTG straddles to 10.
Okay.
And UTG +1 wanted to double straddle, but in Texas, you're not allowed to double straddle. So it's construed as a blind bet.
Right. It's a blind race to 20.
Right.
Okay. So he did, meaning that if everybody limps, he doesn't have an option coming back over the top.
Correct. Only the original straddler to 10 does.
And by the way, they did not play like that when I was in Texas. You could always put in as many straddles as you want. But okay. So 2-5, 10, blind race to 20. Okay.
MP limps for 20.
Okay.
Low jack limps for 20.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the hijack. I make it 150 with ace of spades, queen of spades.
All right. So it's a weird, it's funny because you're not even that deep with the blind race, right? Like, 120 big blind deep. But I've talked about this, although I don't know if it's still a thing because I don't play in many of these games anymore that have like all these crazy straddles, but you'd be surprised, like when you put on like an extra straddle or a blind raise, how sometimes these live players will like take hands that they would otherwise raise and start to limp them, which is really bizarre because there's more dead money out there to win, not as a trap, just like as in between hands. Obviously, I'm going to raise ace, queen of spades over the top for sure, right? So, okay, you go to 150. Okay.
Cutoff behind me calls 150.
Okay.
It folds to the big blind who calls 150.
Okay.
The straddler, he folds.
Uh-huh.
The blind raiser calls for 130 more.
So +1 calls. And then the other limpers are out?
And then MP calls 130 more, and then low jack folds. So only one of the limper.
So how many people are in this hand? 1, 2...
5 ways. 5 ways to the flop. And
so 5 ways and 750.
I have 780, including the limper, but yeah.
So 780. 5 ways, 780. You have the pre-flop lead here with ace, queen of spades. Okay.
So the flop comes 5 of diamonds, jack of clubs, king of spades.
5 of diamonds, jack of clubs, king of spades. So you don't hit anything on the flop, but you do have like a, Broadway gut shot here to a 10 and backdoor spades, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The big blind actually donks for 200.
And he is first to act, by the way.
He is first to act, yes.
Big blind donks for, and all these guys are like sort of 2,500 deep. They're no one super short or anything like this.
Around 2,000. It's varying stack sizes, but I'd say like around 2,000. Some even have like 4,000 or 5,000. So yeah,
this gets really. These are uniquely live spots that can sometimes get annoying when you have a hand like yours, which is a quasi sort of nut draw, but it's not like, pure nut flush draw. Like you've got a gut shot, right, to the nuts, an overcard, backdoor spades. And it's like, it goes multi-way. And then you see like a weird donk, especially when you're closing the action. Well, it actually even gets harder when you're next to act. If you can imagine this where you were like, say, under the gun, you know what I mean? And big blind donks into you for 200 into like an $800 pot. And then you've got 3 guys to your left. It's like, oh God, like what am I going to do? At least here you're going to see what the people in between are going to do.
Yeah. And my overcard, I don't even consider it because I'm concerned that somebody could have hit a set of 5s or 2 pair like king jack.
Well,
So
of course, but I mean, we'll see what happens though,
yeah.
right? I mean, I'm just saying that like if you look at a big blind donking range here in a spot like this, some guys monkey bet like with king queen. And that's what I was saying. Like maybe your ace is good against that. Like if everybody folds in between, it could be some thick value. People tend to check raise these boards though a lot against the pre-flop raiser. Like if you flop king jack or pocket 5s. And then the other draws like queen 10. Once in a while you see you got to do a weird shit with ace 10. I don't really know. I mean, it could be a number of different things here.
So UTG1 folds, MP folds.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think it was necessary at this point to raise, especially since it was multi-way. So I just call 200.
So everybody folds in between. You're closing the action, right? On the flop.
There's still the cutoff behind me to act.
Okay. So you call after these guys fold in the middle, right?
Yes.
All right. So you have one guy behind you. All right. So now, you're getting like 5-1.
Mm-hmm.
And you only have one guy behind you. I mean, I think, this is a continue. I mean, it sucks to be that you're not sort of closing the action, but it's interesting to think about what you would do here with ace king. What would you do here with aces? And again, it's actually a set, but it's actually trickier if you were next to act because you really only have one guy behind you now. So that kind of changes things. I don't know if you thought about what you would do with ace king, aces, set of jack, set of king, something like that.
Yeah, I think with ace king, I'd probably still flat. With a set of jacks, I'd probably bump it up considering how the game flow was going and the action that night.
All right, so hero calls. And then what does the cutoff do?
He calls.
So cutoff over calls. Cutoff who had just flatted your 150 too, by the way. The other thing of note here, just as an aside, if we look back at pre-flop is, I was talking about how people start to limp. You will find some people that will limp re-raise too. The reason why I note that is that depending on how the game was moving, if you are in the cutoff, like if you are, in this case, the caller's villain, you have to take that into consideration if you're ever going to flat and open, that somebody can be sandbagging you from up front. It's interesting because like when a big blind donks for 200, you as a pre-flop raiser calls, and now the cutoff overcalls. I mean, the cutoff has to have at least a king here or queen 10 or like ace 10. I mean, he should never call with a jack here, I wouldn't think. Even getting like 6-1. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you think of how somebody V-pips what is a pair of jacks, like queen jack, jack 10. None of those cards you can ever feel clean with. So I think for him to overcall with a jack would be a big mistake. If he's any type of player, he should have at least a king plus. And then possibly some other types of draws here. So 200 call. Looks like the pot's 1380, right?
Yep, that's what I have.
Yep.
So turn comes 8 of spades, and now I have a backdoor flush draw.
So you have ace queen of spades on king jack 5 with 2 spades. Okay.
The big blind bets 500.
So the big blind double donks.
Yep. And I'm eyeballing his stack. He has about 1,300 behind as well.
So he has 1,300 behind.
Mm-hmm. At this point, I'm getting 1,880 to 500 for my call. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a little over 3.5 to 1. So I just have to be good 1 out of every 4.5 times to be profitable. But I'm also concerned because I'm eyeballing the cutoff stack, and I see that he has 2,000 behind. So I'm tanking, and I'm thinking, is this where I can shove, or should I just call? Because I'm trying to calculate the implied odds, and I figured, okay, I'm still getting 3.5 to 1, assuming that the cutoff overcalls again. My odds will be even better, assuming that I call.
Well, it's nice to have the nut draw here, right? Like you might even get better. But here's the thing. I mean, the way I would look at this is like, I mean, it's not it's not that you're good 3.5 to 1. It's like, what are the odds that I make my draw with implied odds, right? I mean, and you're almost getting the direct price, right? If you count 3 offsuit tens and 9 spades, you have 12 outs. That really only requires 3 to 1, maybe a little bit more than 3 to 1. Of course, if all your outs are clean, right? Like, I mean, if he's got a set, not all your outs are clean. But I think I'm more interested in the fact of whether or not, like, I might have some fold equity here. So you say that the guy who double donks here for 500 has 1,300 behind, right after the 500?
Yeah, the shortest stack of us three.
Right. So if you jam, this is how I do it, at least in my head. If you jammed, he bet 5 into 1380, so the pot's 1880. And then if you jammed for 1800, because he starts the street with 1800, the pot would be like 3680, 1300 for him to call. So he'd be getting pretty good pot odds, right? Almost 3 to 1. And I guess the question then becomes, would he ever, first of all, like, does somebody play king queen this way? Can I get him off of that? Would he ever play king 10 this way? Those things are pretty unlikely, although I'm still a little bit confused about what he has here. But whenever like a guy's going to get those types of pot odds here, and he has like strong hands in his range, you have to not only like hope that he has like the weakest part of his range, like in the form of like king queen that might play it this way, and also that he's going to fold, right? Getting 3,600 plus for 1,300, right? I mean, he might convince himself that you're on a draw. So the other thing here is that because you have the nut draw here, and once in a great while, like maybe you have an extra out here to an ace, but because you have a nut draw here, you don't have to worry about the guy behind you. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say, for example, instead of you having ace, queen of spades here, so let's say you had queen 10 of spades here. I'm just thinking, like, even if, let's say that you had queen 10 of spades, I think that's a viable one. Or maybe like jack 10 of spades that you decide to call with the guy behind you. The point that I'm trying to make here is that sometimes it behooves you to drive out a possible nut draw behind you in a given situation. So with the nut flush draw, you don't have to worry about that now, even though it's on the backdoor side. And once in a great while, your ace might be good. So for all of those reasons, you have to run into the bottom part of his range. He has to fold it, and you have the nut draw. It'd probably want to play this as a call for the most part.
Yeah, and considering from the beginning the hand was just pretty out of line and wild, and it was 5-handed, I just thought there's just too many variables for me to think that I even have fold equity. So I do actually elect to call.
Okay. So hero calls.
And cutoff comes along again, calls 500.
Wow. All right. So cutoff calls. And so now the pot's 2880. I'm just saying wow because I'm trying to think about what the cutoff has here. Yeah. Because you have a queen in your hand. And I'm trying to think about, like, if I was the cutoff and I was playing like in a loosey-goosey game and I somehow, once in a while I might flat with, like, I'll probably do a lot of 3-betting with king, queen suited, right, in the cutoff. But once in a while, I get loose and flat with like king, queen off, right? And this is what I'm trying to picture because I'm always going to 3-bet ace, king, right? Or say I had like king 10 suited, king 10 of hearts, and that might be more like viable, right? Like a call with like king 10 suited. I'm trying to think, like, if I'm the cutoff with a king, whether it's king, queen, or king 10, and now you've got the big blind who's double donked, and you've called as the preflop raiser again, knowing that I'm behind you, the pot's gonna be it's 2380, and it would be 500 for me to call. Say I had like king 10 of hearts. So, like, that's an icky spot, like, to fold top pair. And I don't know if I would fold top pair still getting 5 to 1. Obviously, the guy bet more. You know what I'm saying? It's just, so I guess he could have a king still behind you because of these, what ends up being kind of smallish types of bets, relative to the pot size and the pot odds he's getting. So, all right. So 2880 to the river.
Yeah, and sadly, the river's a blank. It's a 5 of hearts. It pairs the board.
Okay.
Big blind goes all in for his remaining 1,300, and I just can't call.
So big blind all in.
Yeah, and then I fold.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously you're gonna fold. I just wanted to do this hand because I think it was good for hand reading. There's no gravitas payoff like the last hand, but I'm trying to think about what is the big blind to have here. So, he bet the flop. He bet all three streets, right? And now, like, there's a one combo of quads, right? Pocket fives. Does he go balls to the wall here with king jack? I mean, king jack beats ace king. So he's beating everything and it beats any other king. So I think on this one, like, unless you specifically have aces, like, for example, say you had ace king here, John, right? Let's say you have ace king off. Okay. Now you're at the river and now he moves in for 1300. What do you do?
And I'm getting...
Well, you're going to get 41 for 13. And then you got a guy behind you who you don't think has a strong hand. And nothing has come at the end to make a draw, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to pay off probably, right? I think you'd have to pay off. So
yeah, I think I just have to be good 1 out of 4 times.
Yeah, and that's why I think he could actually play king jack this way. I'm going to kind of flip it around like that. Like maybe I would, and then if I'm the guy who plays king jack that way and I value own myself against ace ace, so be it, right? Because I think if I had king jack, I mean, even though I'm blocking a king, one of you guys has some hand, right? So obviously you fold, and then what does the guy behind you do?
Cutoff tanks for a while, like 2 minutes, ends up making a crying call.
Good, we're going to get a reveal because I don't know what the reveal is. All right, so what does the guy in the big blind have? Now it should be, he really shouldn't like bluff queen 10 here. I mean, plus you have a queen in your hand, so I think it's like, it really should be like king jack here, or he's got quads. What does the small blind have?
Jack for jack 4-5.
Okay, jack. Okay, that's one that we washed. Yes, that makes less sense too. That he didn't 4-bet you. Got it. Okay.
Yep.
I would put that in the same hand class, right?
And then cutoff doesn't reveal, but he mentions, because we were talking about the hand for like a few minutes, several minutes after. He says he had ace king. So yeah, king.
So big blind he said he had ace king.
He said that. I never saw, but.
Well, he must have at least a king though, right? Cutoff. I mean, again, I would say, I don't know if I believe him that he has ace king, but I think if I'm the cutoff, I'll go back. I like this hand. I'll go back to what I said a couple of streets ago. If I'm the cutoff and I somehow have either king queen here or king 10, okay, I'm kind of begrudgingly calling the turn. We talked about that because of pot odds, right? Now, once this guy moves all in on the river, if I had king 10 or king queen and you as the preflop raiser called, obviously I'm not going to overcall. I'm going to fold, right? I'm not going to call with king. But once you fold though, it's like, again, it's kind of like, well, it's just interesting when the 5 comes. I mean, I don't know if it really changes. The only thing it changes if I have king queen here is if like somebody's flatting ace king pre from the big blind's perspective and playing it like this, I mean, he played jack like this, but that's a little bit stronger than ace king. But I think you've played it fine.
Quick question. So on the turn, if the cutoff actually jammed behind me, that's just an easy call, right? Because of pot odds.
Well, and then what? The big blind calls? Yeah, I mean, you're going to get, big blind bets 500, you call, the pot's 2380, right? Let's say the cutoff jams for like 1500, right? Then it's 4380, and then the other guy calls, that's 5380. It's like 1,000 for you to call. I mean, even if somebody has a set, right, you still have 10 outs, right? 10 outs. I mean, you only need 3.5 to 1, right, with your draw. So, yeah. All right, man. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it, John.